So fear is probably, I feel, the most important topic when it comes to spirituality to talk about. Fear is such a dominant emotion. It's so slippery. It's so permeating. It's so controlling in the sense that it has such a heavy influence on our life. And fear for many people can be very hidden, can be sort of in the crevices of one's consciousness, of one's mind, and it's so powerful, it's so overshadowing, it's so destructive. It so points to our sense of self-importance. It so points to how eager we are to believe, how slippery we stand, how easily we are thrown off balance because we so identify with certain ideas and beliefs and notions that we have about ourselves. And as somebody once said to me, like, fear is like inflatable sharks. You can, if you're really quiet, you can sort of swim by them, and if you see them for what they are, they deflate. They're no longer those scary inflatable sharks that you need to swim by. That you need to be afraid of. And in particular, when you see fear for what it is, from a place of freedom, from a place of light, from a place of when you come from a place of nothing, when there's pure just an attention, an intelligence there to observe it with you. And that takes a little bit of fine-tuning, if you will, of really understanding how to learn about fear, and not learn the words, not learn the ideas about fear, but learn for yourself by looking, right? By being there with it, by seeing it step by step, how it moves, where it comes from, why it's there, what its place is really. Because what we call fear, it's not the same as like a danger coming at you, right? If there's a dangerous animal on the floor running towards you, whatever, you move, right? It's just pure basic survival instinct operating. There's danger and you move. There's no thinking about it. Like, hey, maybe if a bear runs towards you, you have those thoughts of like, hey, I was taught to let's stand up to a bear, right? But what I'm trying to point out is, like, if it's something else, like a running train, there's no thinking in between. There's just like, okay, I need to step away. And that's important to understand and to make that distinction, because that's not the normal fear that we face day to day, right? The normal fear day to day has way much more to do with the idea that I have about myself, and this idea of needing to protect myself, to not want to lose parts of myself or the whole of myself, right? So there's the fear of death, there's the fear of perishing or not being there tomorrow, there's the fear of what my neighbor thinks of me. So position, what's my position to my peers, right? What's my position at the workplace? Am I going to lose my job tomorrow? And the comparison between myself and other people, where do I stand? The fear of, in that way, of hierarchy, right? There's the fear of not having enough money tomorrow. I'm kind of tied into survival. What am I going to do, if I lose my job? There can be the fear of fear itself, there's so much stress that can come with fear, so much pain, right? So having to face that every day, the struggle of life, the struggle of suffering, right, of depression. So there's all sorts of different expressions of fear, right? There are all these different branches of fear. But what is a fear on itself, right? Like, what is it? Not the branches, but what is the root of fear? I think, evolutionary speaking, we can pretty clearly see why fear is there, right? There's just the avoidance of pain, there's survival and reproductive strategies, right? We're really good at that. But fear is such an old, it's been around for so long, and it's being so, it's so constantly aggravated, it's so constantly inflamed, right? And it goes hand in hand with a lot of different other movements that thought comes up with. Because ultimately, a thought is again at the root of fear. Because it's comparing itself, it's measuring, right? Like it's creating images from the past. It's putting it toward the future. Like, hey, or what if I lose my job, right? Those kind of fears. It's constantly sort of nibbling at you, right? It's very easy to service it. And if you understand like what we stand on as a human being, it's kind of logical that it's there, because life is terrifying because we're blind in the sense of we can't see the future, right? We don't know where we're heading because there's so many possibilities, and thought is constantly trying to anticipate. That's why it's constantly measuring and analyzing, right? It's trying to help you, right? Make better decisions, making sure you're going to be around tomorrow. So in that way, and that kind of analysis is real paralysis, because it's not trying to just survive the body. It's trying to survive the idea that I have about myself. All these ideas that I need to sort of keep alive. I need to constantly keep this idea that I have about myself alive. Just imagine how much effort to constantly be treading up water. I need to stay alive. I need to be alive. I need to be alive. And if somebody says something bad about me, that feels like death. If somebody says something mean at work, for some people, your spouse, it feels like death, right? If the whole world points at you and says you're wrong, that feels like death. And so there's that inner, really sort of primordial fear that we're still keeping alive. It's that flame that we keep alive that is so strong, right? It's such a strong emotion that it overshadows anything that's wholesome, that's pure, that's loving, that's because it's the complete loss of innocence, that kind of fear of self-importance. And there's so much there's so much me, there's so much self-importance that needs to survive. The money in my bank account, the job, the relationship, the paying my bills, my children. There's so much to lose, right? And there's so much to be afraid of in that way, if you're so inclined. And it doesn't quite matter, what the specific fears are that you have. The fact is that you have them, and even if they don't express themselves today, they're lying there dormant. So it's still important to look at it. You still have that potential to be terrified. And being terrified and being fearful makes us make really bad decisions. It helps us be very neurotic. It helps us to lose love, lose the understanding of what we are, to lose connection with oneself, because it puts up so much resistance to life. I was saying no to life, and that hurts. We're saying I need to, like a cat in danger, those really fearful eyes, but there's so much adrenaline, there's so much readiness to fight, there's so much readiness to do whatever it takes, right? It comes from fear. And you can see how that translates into a war and conflict. There's so much it wants to, especially for men with I forgot the hormone, that spikes, the male hormone that spikes from that kind of fear, testosterone. It's a lot, right? There's a lot of energy that's behind that and wants to defend, and in that it finds a certain pleasure, right? For a lot of people, it finds in that sort of separation with something else or somebody else, as there's we get pleasure, some people, out of hurting other people, right? Because then I'm a little bit higher up, and so I'm more safe, and so there's this constant yearning for that psychological security that comes from not having fear, and yet we do everything we can in our power to set up everything, society, the world, to be more fearful, right? To have less psychological, to be less secure, to have less psychological security through nationalism, through comparing oneself with other people, through setting up all these borders everywhere. That's where we are. That's reality right now. That's all fine and well. But the fact of the matter is that we've become more and more violent in that sense, separating myself from other people and comparing. All these things breed fear, and that makes us a little bit neurotic at best, right? It really cuts us off from life because there's a massive resistance. So fear is an incredibly important topic, and in the next video we'll talk more about like what we can do about fear. But I think it's important to first understand like it is all that we understand the damage that fear does, if you will, without condemning it. That's, we're not trying to say it's bad, go away, because then we're again moving from fear, right? We're now being like, hey, let's go away because we're afraid of fear. It's nothing like that. But can we see the repercussions of the fact of the matter of what fear does to ourselves and to our world outside of us? And from there, let's go in the next video, talk more about what we can do. Is there anything to do? And if we do something, from what place do we move, right? From what place do we operate on fear? From what place do we observe? Because again, a perception is way more important. How you perceive, what you perceive. The seeing is way more important than blanketing it with any ideas or trying to solve it, trying to be rid of it. That's not gonna work. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.